Hello everyone, in this video I will be showing you how to prepare watercolor paper before painting on it. I will start by telling you about the quality of the paper that we will be using. Watercolor paper comes in different weights, which means the thickness of it. 90 pound and 140 pounds are the most common weights, 90 being lighter, 140 heavier. I will be showing you how to prepare the 140 pound cold press acid-free paper. In this case I will be using Kseniya paper, 140 pounds. The size of the paper is up to you. I will show you smaller cards how to use, and to trim your paper we will need pencil, knife, scissors and a ruler. And I will be showing you two methods of placing and preparing the paper. One method I used before, it's with the masking tape as I'm showing you right now, and the other method is with the gummed paper tape, which I've never tried before, but we'll try it this time together. So the masking tape cup comes in different sizes. I would probably prefer the medium size for this time. You'll also need a sponge to clean up the water from the paper after we soaked it in a little basin or container. And let's start. So we're gonna get our paper out of the album, and you can tell the paper is pretty thick, which is perfect for what we will be doing. So I'm just gonna remove the paper out and start trimming. Also, the size of the paper or the cards, if you're creating a card like a holiday card, it can be 4x6 or 5x7. It's up to you. And if you decide that it's not going to be a holiday card, you're just painting for yourself, that's also okay. It can be any size you're comfortable with. So you need to first of all be measuring the size, and just make sure that you know, if you're creating a card and you will need an envelope, that you do have an envelope. Usually envelopes anyway come in a little bit bigger than card size, so just make sure your card size is standard 4x6 or 5x7. And here we go, start trimming. Be careful not to cut yourself. I wouldn't recommend using scissors for this kind of trimming because the lines will not be straight. So the knife is, I find, the best way to trim your cards or paper in general if you're even painting anything. Just be careful not to cut yourself. So see, I'm checking with my envelope to make sure that it will fit, because you can always adjust. It's better to make sure your cards are the size you need before you start painting on them. And once the card is ready, now we are ready to soak it in water. And for this method we will use the gummed watercolor paper tape, the one with the glue on one side. So we will make sure when you place your paper it gets completely covered with water and there are no bubbles under the paper. Just make sure you press it in and leave it for 30 minutes to an hour. And for now I'll show you my favorite method that I used often, using the regular masking tape. So for this example I'm using just a medium-sized tape. Once you place your card on a board, first we will measure up the border at which your tape will be placed. It's important to do that, so then after we remove the tape, your borders are equal. After you measure, just carefully place it on and then firmly press on, making sure there are no bubbles and no folds anywhere, because we will be making this paper very, very wet right now, and you don't want that water to go anywhere under the tape, because that will make the tape come off. So then we will use a very fluffy brush, or you can use even the same sponge that I showed you before, and we will just very well make that paper wet. Just keep putting water And here actually you can also use a watercolor cards, which are great, but you do have to prepare them as well, even though it says that the paper will not bubble from painting, but from my experience it did bubble after I painted on it, so that's why I prefer to tape it down as well. And we use the same method. We will first measure our border and make sure you know which side you'll be painting on, so you know if the card is opening, closing, you don't get confused. So again, for this method I actually measured a little bit thicker border, and then the same method, applying tape and firmly pressing it onto the board, making sure no bubbles, no folds. And then the same method of applying water, a lot of water, just make it wet, just like that. We will leave paper to dry for about 2 to 3 hours. It needs to be completely dry before we start painting on it, so 2 to 3 hours should be enough. My extra piece of paper, last piece of paper that is left here, I decided to also submerge into the water, and just make sure that when you have two pieces of paper in the same bowl that they are not sticking together and there are no air between them. And while our paper is soaking and another one is drying, I will be preparing the tape. This tape is very wide and I don't need this width for our small cards, so I'll be trimming it down, probably in 3 stripes. So we'll be peeling off the paper, cutting it to size, about the size of the card, just a little bit bigger, and then we will be trimming it down. As you can see, the shiny side is the side with the glue, and that's the plain side that we will not be wetting. So just make sure when you're doing the trimming or anything else like that, working with the tape, that you don't accidentally make it wet. You can always, instead of doing what I'm doing right now, just buy a, not as wide of a tape as I did. They come in different sizes. So here now we have our tape ready. Let's check on paper for now. See, you can tell that some areas are dry and some areas still wet, so we'll continue waiting, and I'm just checking to make sure that the tape is really stuck to the board and to the paper well. And the other one, see how it's popping a little? So that will go away. That's nothing to be worried about. As long as it's taped down, it should do the job. See, after a while, checking it again, and see how it started to straighten. So that's what we need. And this one seems like it's ready, but I will still usually wait for 2 hours. Even if it seems dry, I'll just give it an extra hour. So let's prepare our paper for gummed paper tape. First thing is to shake off the water off the paper carefully, but as much as possible. And then we will place our paper on the board. As you can see, I'm using an old cutting board, just to make sure that it doesn't, if it gets wet, it's okay. Don't place it on the table directly. And then with the sponge, slightly wet it first, I'm removing all the excess water. As much as I can, obviously. There is no need to remove all of it. It will need to be dried on its own, but just some extra water, just remove it. And then with the tape, you have to be careful. Make sure that you make your sticky part fully wet, that you don't leave any surface not wet, otherwise it will create bubbles on the tape, which will allow the water to seep in and not dry properly. So once you make the tape wet, firmly press it onto the board and the paper. Measure the border size, of course, again, and then just start applying. You can help yourself with a sponge to kind of make sure it's all pressed in well, and then with a paper towel, just go over the paper slightly to, make sure that the water is evenly sitting on the paper. And then I'm doing the same thing with my extra piece. And if you feel like you applied a little bit too much water on your tape, just grab another piece of tape better. Because too much is not good and not enough is also not good. So just kind of like, slightly brush water on, as long as you see it shining from the water, and you're good to go. After that, after you've pressed onto the board and make sure the tape is sitting well, we're gonna stand our paper up to dry. And for this method, we will wait 24 hours because our paper was fully submerged in water. And that's it. So 2 methods done. And once the paper is dry, we're ready to paint.